You requested it, and we're back, Frieza 700, and we're here to review Edgar Allan Poe's favorite fucking fan.
After the...
Okay, so I kind of apologize ahead of time. I have a bit of a headache. That's why it was taking me a while to do this video, but also I'm not really a big fan of Corvus Corax, so I had to do a bunch of research to kind of give you guys the best possible video I could do. So, Corvus Corax, when he was a baby, he crash landed on the moon of Kaivahr, known as Lycaeus. Now, Kaivahr is a very fascinating world in the sense that it was a technologically advanced world. It was basically a forge world. Problem was that Kaivahr had like nothing on it. There was no resources. But they had a moon. And this moon was not a natural moon. It was actually forced to be its moon, where Lycaeus is minerally rich and has a lot of really deep deposits. Now, the tech guilds of Kaivahr, who benefited a lot of money producing all these goods out of this moon, they made a gravity well that forced it to stay in their orbit. So that's why I mean by it's not a natural moon. This is actually more or less an artificial moon. So here's what they do. They take a bunch of people who they don't like, who are criminals, and they do what Skyrim does, and they just throw these prisoners on that planet. And mind you, Lycaeus is a dead world. It's not a death world in the sense that it's so dangerous that it will kill you. It's a dead world as in it's got no atmosphere. It's got nothing. So really, the only way you can live there is through pre-built buildings that are able to keep you alive through atmospheric chambers and wearing certain suits to protect you and stuff like that. Well, Corvus Corax crash landed on Lycaeus. Now, he actually crashed way up north near the Arctic regions of this planet, and sure enough, he crashed deep enough inside the ice that he was found by the miners. Now, I already said that the miners are criminals, but what I forgot to mention was that these aren't just criminals. These are also political enemies. So, on Kaivahr, the planet is so fucking corrupt because the tech guilds are so powerful and they're the only thing keeping the planet running, that they found out that the best way to run everything is to do human slavery, where you enslave everybody. And the ones who guard the slaves are pretty much pieces of shit criminals. Now, the thing is that it's hard to say criminals when literally everyone is corrupt. So there is no law, there is no government, it's just the tech guilds. So again, it's one of those things where technically there are no criminals because technically there is no law. So in that sense, you can kind of get it where Corvus was in. He was in kind of a pickle. Especially if he was found by the tech guilds, but he wasn't. Instead, he was found by a bunch of miners who were told to follow a mineral vein, which is great. Now, these political people found Corvus Corax, and their religion, they believed that there would be a god who would descend and save them from the tyranny of the tech guilds. So, they took this as a sign that Corvus is their god. That's why they named him Corvus Corax, because Corvus Corax in their tongue means deliverance. And in their case, it was actually pretty close to the truth, especially when he started to grow rapidly, like all Primarchs do. This just confirmed in their minds that he is definitely a fucking god. Now, while he was growing up around these elderly people, they actually humbled him, and they actually taught him some very fascinating lessons that he would take throughout his whole career as a general and throughout his whole life. Hold on a second, I'm gonna open up a soda because I'm thirsty as a motherfucker. And with Corvus Corax, he learned, because again, by the age of 3, every Primarch is pretty much fully grown. But with Corvus Corax, he was being fed by these people who were just really different political factions and workers who never were able to work as efficiently. That's the reason why they're in prison. Yeah, imagine that bullshit. Your boss didn't like how you didn't work as hard as Jimmy, so he just sends your ass to prison permanently. Yeah, that's what situation these people were in. You don't agree with me? You're not an SJW like me? You're going to prison for life, buddy, in this death world. Have fun. Yeah, that's the kind of people that were raising Corvus Corax, raised people of varying political ideas who believed in freedom, dignity, all these very nice ideas. Now, the problem is that there are some actual prisoners there who are actual murderers. But of course, these people kept Corvus away from those elements. And they educated him in a variety of fields of study, like philosophy and stuff like this. And this was actually a great background for him as far as education goes, because he learned really quickly about his situation, and he learned really quickly about really just what the universe is and the way human life should be run and regarded as. He actually had a moral compass. This is something that Conrad Kurz wished he had. So, they also taught him something very interesting, which is, as I said before, this would go throughout his whole life, which is be careful. They couldn't emphasize this enough. Be careful. Because if the tech guilds find out he's around, they will definitely take him. And who knows what they would do. Sell him, upgrade him, make him one of their leaders. Who knows what the fuck they would have done with Corvus Corax. Now, of course, in order to sustain a Primarch, you would think it would be hard because already the workers are underfed. Because again, there is no government, there is no regulations. Well, it's actually not that hard to imagine. Because see, one person stealing a biscuit and hiding it isn't going to feed a demigod. But 60 people with 60 biscuits, all of a sudden you got yourself a fucking feast. And that's how they kind of sustained the Primarch in his youth and kept him going later on in his life. Because after all, he's a massive dude. But while he was on lycaeus, he used his sneak tactics. And this is where we kind of come to theories a little bit. Is that Corvus Corax has the ability to shadow walk. And what shadow walk is he's somehow able to go undetected despite being in full view. So, what does that mean? That means that he is walking around. Yeah, that's right. A 9-foot tall monstrosity is walking around in full fucking daylight, and you do not, for whatever reason, acknowledge it. You, for whatever reason, just don't even perceive his existence. This is going to be a rather difficult one to explain. Because it's either part of his gene seed, so he was already kind of meant to be a sneaky fucker, or this is part of his psychic capabilities, because later in his life he enters the Eye of Terror, and the Eye of Terror mutates him to the point that it actually empowers his shadow walk. Now, difference between now and then is that then, during lycaeus, all he did was just simply walked around and looked so unimportant that the human mind wasn't even able to comprehend that he existed. In the future, in the Eye of Terror, he gets such a psychic upgrade that he's actually able to turn himself invisible. So now he's no longer deceiving your mind, he's actually invisible. He actually could turn into a flock of ravens. This is a very different type of shadow walk, clearly. Because one requires psychic abilities, the one that we're talking about now is just more or less him following Murphy's code of law, or a code of war. So, if you don't know, Murphy was a statistician in World War I, and he wrote a little book about Murphy's Law. And what this entailed was, in order to survive, look as unimportant as possible. That's one of the laws. Look as unimportant as possible, and people won't even know you're there. I think that's what Corvus Corax was doing when he shadow walked. He looked so unimportant that you just couldn't perceive him, and he perfected that. He perfected the art of looking unimportant. Just looking like just an average person. He perfected that so well that people didn't even understand that he was around. Of course, this doesn't work around technology, we find later on, where Corvus gets spotted by cameras, and that does cost him a few men, that cost him dearly. But while he's undetected, this is where we see he's putting things in motion. He's taking over lycaeus without anyone knowing. He is taking warriors that he's chosen on shadow walks with him. So these warriors have shadow walk just like him. And this goes along with my theory that they're just looking unimportant. So instead of being the guy who's charging in the front line screaming, "Yeah, for America!" Instead, they're the guy way in the back, just casually walking with his gun kind of at his waist. That person is so unimportant, no one would ever shoot at him. This is what him and his shadow warriors were doing, looking so unimportant that no one even noticed that they were around. So they casually did a bunch of things. They did several missions. Hundreds of missions, actually. They were stealing supplies. They were stealing guns. They were establishing secret caches of guns around the planet for the prisoners. They were recruiting people secretly. They were stealing food. They were sabotaging equipment. So the guards never had to really shoot their guns most of the time. So they don't realize that the guns that aren't stolen are the ones that are broken. They don't realize this till the moment's too late. And also, while Corvus Corax is roaming the planet with his warriors, he's also inciting riots because of one big reason. There is so limited amounts of guards. Mind you, these tech guilds are looking for the money. So they want to just enslave these people, and for hundreds of years these people have been enslaved and never had any hint of resistance. So they started to cut back on security funds. And back, and back, and back. And they kept cutting it so damn low. Well, Corvus took advantage of this. He incited riots all around the planet, but not all at the same time. These were small riots, and this was meant to kind of stress and scatter the guard. So that way when the time was right, they were too scattered and too few in number to really offer that much of a resistance. Sure enough, the day came when Kaivahr and its tech guilds were about to lose full control of lycaeus without ever fucking realizing it. This is one of those situations where, looking back at it, you would say, oh, look at all these things that we should have caught on to. But because of that 2020 vision, you didn't really see it till after it happened. So, of course, Corvus leads the revolution, but he did something very interesting. So he knew that as much as he agrees with his political affiliates and his workers who are just abused, he knows that there's not enough of those people to really overthrow everyone. So he needed to free the actual prisoners too, but under one agreement. If I am going to free you, you are exempt from your crime, but, and this is a big but, if you repeat said crime, these shackles will be put back on you. Okay, every prisoner agreed to that fucking deal. And sure enough, he led a very costly but bloody conflict that in one night overthrew the whole planet. This is why I said he needed those prisoners, because it was still going to cost him men. But not only this, he was going to need men for the retaliation efforts that Kaivahr sent next. Kaivahr, being the fuckers they are, send a giant army into the planet. Now, the problem with this army is that they don't really know what lycaeus is like. They don't know the topography, they don't know anything. Well, Corvus Corax does. And he uses this and obliterates this army. Now Kaivahr is in deep shit, and the tech guilds are very fucking concerned. They lost all their minerals, so now their wealth is gone. Now they're in a negative net of cash, because they always like to spend money as quick as they earned it. And also, they have a bunch of rebels on the moon who have access to atomic weaponry. Yeah, that's something I should have added, is that lycaeus was also a weapon storage for the tech guilds. They kind of just put everything on one fucking planet because they're idiots. And Corvus had all these nukes, but he didn't really feel sure about nuking the planet, because, again, to his people, losing an innocent life isn't worth it. And not everyone on Kaivahr was guilty of what the tech guilds were doing. It was just a select few thousand people. Well, this is the day that the Emperor came to Corvus. And no one really knows what was said between each other, but we do know that they spent a whole day and a whole night together talking. Now, what was transpired is up to the conjecture and up to really for people to just assume and theorize. But obviously one thing was certain. After Corvus Corax was done speaking to his father, he told his father, I will return to your Imperium once I completed my mission in subjugating Kaivahr. Well, he took the Emperor's advice, walked up, and put the nukes inside shuttles and sent those shuttles on the planet of Kaivahr, and with controlled detonations, he's killed a few thousand people, but saved millions in the process because he didn't have to destroy the world. He just needed to destroy a few people. And this is where I think the Emperor did tell him something that he needed to know, which is that it is better to kill a few thousand innocents rather than a million innocents. Now, I don't think Corvus was going to do a genocide. No. I just think the Emperor was preparing him for the idea that maybe Kaivahr would have destroyed them instead. Maybe Kaivahr would have actually sent millions of innocents onto the planet armed with guns, and Corvus would have annihilated them. Now, of course, this wouldn't be the Primarch's fault, but still, it kind of is if he didn't do what he did, which is nuke the tech guilds. And after he nuked them, they surrendered. And immediately, boom, the Mechanicum comes in and rebuilds the world and renames lycaeus Deliverance, which is basically Corvus Corax swinging his dick in the air going, haha guys, I have a planet named after me. Fucking cunt. But either way, this guy's a rather dark person because we can tell he's lost a lot of people and he's more or less so used to this dark environment where people are just oppressed and tyranny is just reigning unchecked. So he's kind of got this dark personality with him where he has no problem throwing the lives of innocents in exchange for freedom, in exchange that people will win. This is what's molded Corax into the person he is today. So, that is his origins, and later on in the Great Crusade, we're going to talk about how he interacted with his legion. As I said before in the Raven Guard video, they were originally something totally different. They were originally a bunch of occupants meant to terrorize people. As you can see, Corvus Corax would hate that. He was from a tyrannical situation, so he would be wanting to go as far away from that as fucking humanly possible. So we're going to see how that works in the next video whenever I upload it of Corvus Corax during the Great Crusade. Sorry this took a while, especially you, Michael Barney. You've really been riding my ass, but that's because you love me, and I like that. I appreciate it a lot. So, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, don't forget to tell your friends about this channel, because it helps a lot, because we're almost there to 100. I know 100 sounds small when you compare it to other channels, but to me, that's a lot. Like, already we're at 71, so great job, guys. So, besides that, enjoy my outro video, and always, if you like my content and you want to see more, just click on my channel and just look at all the stuff that I've uploaded. See you guys next time.